So how do you view life? Have you ever thought about that? Like, have you ever actually thought about, like, how do you actually, like, view life? I remember, like, many years ago, I don't know, I think I was still living at home when my mom described to me, or when I learned this concept, how people view life differently, like how they think about certain experiences or how they think back to certain experiences, very different. Some people view life, and I remember my mom saying this, like as a movie, right? Like, they will see certain images of past events or whatever, like in motion picture, like in motion, right? But like an action movie or like a movie, right? So they'll see certain scenes of their life like that. A lot of people, I think, view or will think back on certain times of their life will think like that, right? Like they will have, that's how their memory kind of works. Some people's memory works differently, like more in like music, or like more sounds, right? Like that's how they remember certain times in their life, or how they think about life is more of like a musical type of journey, or like a sound, you know. And those type of people tend to associate certain memories or certain events with certain music, you know, things like that. And some people are just more literal and they see more 3D, you know. They have more like snapshots, like pictures, like just snapshots, okay, like of certain memories or certain things, you know, either from the past or how they see life in general, right? Anyway, some people's personality, and some people like me, you could be a mix of all of it. Like you kind of have a mixture of how you see life, you know, very differently. Not just a journey, you know, and not just you know, like win or lose type of thing, you know, or you know, some people see life like it's like he who dies with the most toys wins. You'll see people who have that on the back of their car, you know, their bumper sticker. Some people are like, life is considered successful if they have love around them, or if they're able to express love, you know. I tend to be more like that. I tend to be like more like that now, especially. I think I kind of always was like that, but I definitely have changed, you know, like the older I got, and with the more experiences that I've been through, with losing, you know, people, close friends, family, and things like that, made me more sensitive to the experience of love and to the feeling of love and what actually means love, right? I'm going to give you an example of how certain things change for me. I remember when I first moved out on my own, and I had my own place, my own apartment, everything. I wanted everything a certain way. I was very, very particular about, you know, everything being drip, 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 you know, like right, you know, lined up, and either, you know, organized in a certain way, and everything looking a certain way, and all of that. And I remember I remember back then I liked things to be very, I want to say cold, but kind of like, let's see, what's the word? Not cold, sterile, okay, like sterile, like a very, very, just a clean environment, right? Like clean lines. I remember I liked cobalt blue and grays, and just like more modern, okay? I guess that's how you would describe it as far as decoration, more modern, like sleek and modern, right? And then I remember when I got pregnant, after I got married and I got pregnant to my first child, I was like, immediately I remember looking around thinking, this house is not warm enough. This doesn't look like home. This does not look like a home. This doesn't feel like love. And it was because I remember feeling like I wanted it to look more, or be more reflective of like the way that I was raised, right? And the reason why is because that felt like home to me. So what felt like home to me, And not only home, but home was a happy place. For me, home was a happy place. I was happy in my home with my parents, but also I can remember being very happy like with my grandparents in their home, right? And both of those homes tended to look more like Italian Tuscany, like grapes everywhere, and warm colors, and my mom loved to decorate in like fall colors, and fall, especially fall and wintertime, and just not at all what I was looking at when I got pregnant. And so immediately I remember I changed everything. I just went right into like actually it was more or less, when I say immediately, it was kind of immediate, because when I first brought Jaden home, my first son, we had decorated his room and stuff, but then we ended up moving shortly into that next house, and I didn't decorate anything like the same as I did with the first house. And it was because of that right there. I just remember thinking like I wanted the house to be warm and very, very inviting and very homey for my son to grow up in, for any children to grow up in, right? So my outlook on what I felt like my house or life should look like changed, right? It just changed, like just like that, right? And that happens. That very much happens to people, especially some people will say certain things like you've gone through an awakening or an experience, something like that, right? And it kind of like changes your outlook and your view. There are certain experiences in life that you'll go through, right, that absolutely change your outlook. Look, like they change the way you see something. You saw something one way, now you see it another way. For example, you might have viewed God one way, but then you fall in love to the right woman. So, the right one, the right woman, and that woman brings you closer to God and gives you a more spiritual experience, and you now view God differently. I mean, hallelujah, like hallelujah means something totally different to you now. Like hallelujah back then was like praise God, maybe something you did just in your church, but you with the right woman and she brings the hallelujah out of you, right? Okay. And now you view love differently, you may view life differently because of this experience, right? And so you might even, your memories or thinking back and whatnot actually might be different now, like how you view life, right? I remember also having the same experience where there was an immediate shift when my late husband passed away, and I came back home from the hospital. And prior to this, I would say that I used to be very nitpicky. I mean, after children, for sure, I was a little OCD. Well, I was always OCD. And then I had children, and it was very hard with the first one to stay OCD, right? Because children, obviously, your first concern is to keep them alive, right? If you're nursing, you gotta nurse. Could be up. Everybody's different. Maybe a year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever. But anyway, that's a whole sacrifice of a woman's body and time and everything, right? So your whole what's important to you and all of your priorities change. Like your daily priorities totally shift when you have a newborn baby. But then when you then proceed to have the second or the third one, right? You absolutely lose track of being able to be crazy, nitpicky about every little thing, and trying to make everything line up in your house, or trying to be like OCD if every single blind is, clean in the window and all that stuff, right? Why? Because you're just tired. You're just too tired. You're too tired. Okay. So prior to children, I definitely was very OCD. Very much liked everything in a certain place. I couldn't go to sleep unless it was done. Like I got triggered visually by certain things being out of line. I liked my carpet to be vacuumed and lined in a certain way, which of course is something that you do, like if you get your house clean professionally, or if you do that for a living, that is something that definitely people do and will look so that your house looks, complete, right? Is having lines in the carpet. Okay. But I'm saying for you to obsess over something like that when you have children that you got to keep alive or fed, bathed, homework, and things like that, right? Like you kind of like something has to give by the end of the day when you drop dead tired, right? Something has to give. And it's usually stuff like that, okay? So a lot of my OCD kind of went away, but it didn't go away 100%. And I just remember still trying to do a lot of that stuff after both kids, but not as bad. But I remember it would still visually trigger me and then give me like a mental tick. Like where I couldn't go to bed, I couldn't go to sleep. It was hard for me to even like, relax into love with Travis when it was time to, like, okay, relax for the evening. Okay. Hold on, I'm checking something. When it was time to relax for the evening, it was hard for me to like do that without like I gotta first clean everything up and make sure there's no dishes in the sink, blah 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 blah. Okay, and so and I can also remember being nagging. I can remember nagging him about every little thing, like don't leave your shoes out in the hallway, or put this away, or you left shavings in the sink again, and I could always say, like, I could always see a trail of wherever Travis walked through the house because he left a mess behind him. And I used to be like, Travis, and it got so bad. I remember at one point, I remember saying to him, like, he could only kiss me like 3 times a day or something. I don't remember now if it was 3, whatever times it was, but it was like after that 3rd time, he had to pick up something or do something as an act of service. Now, I realize now that in the love language book, that was considered act of service. Back then, I didn't read the book, so I didn't know. But acts of service is my second love language, right? So anyway, because I used to be so particular, I used to feel like if he doesn't do it, then I have to do it, and that's just more work for me, right? And as it turns out, like when he passed, okay, when I came home from the hospital, and I could see his trail of where he was throughout the house. Like I could see where he was throughout the whole entire house. Unconsciously, or I didn't realize at that moment, because he had passed and because I loved him so much, and obviously he was a soulmate to me, we were in love. But he passed so suddenly, right? So at that moment, instantly, when I walked through the house, everything became a relish, right, of him. Now, it's the same thing with pictures, right? Because once a person passes away, that's all the pictures you get with that person. That's it. Whatever pictures you took, that's it. That's all you got left. So now you cherish all the pictures that you actually have, right? Because they're memories and they're special to you, and you now know that you cannot take any more, or have any more conversations, all of that, right? And so instantly when I remember walking through the house, I remember thinking, his bag was right there by the door. His shoes were right over there. He had shavings in the sink. It was all these things that he had touched. Literally. It's like his energy was just there a few hours earlier. But now he was like no longer on this earth, right? It does something to the brain. It really does something, right? Like to walk through your house and see that person's clothes, that person's shoes, their toothbrush, foods in the refrigerator that he wanted or that was his, or half-eaten plates that he didn't get to finish. Things like that, right? It will trip your brain out. Especially when this is a person that you were attached to. You wanted to be attached. You willingly were attached. You love that person, right? There are so many remnants of that person around you, maybe inside of you, just depending on the relationship that you had. Okay. And now that energy, that person, that spirit of a person is completely gone, like from your atmosphere, just that fast. Right? And so the experience of that, there's so many things that are going on through your mind when you lose somebody, right? There's sadness and grief. There's so many things. But I remember instantly, I didn't want anybody to move anything that was in the house, because I had friends and family that came to stay with me right away. And people needed to move stuff so that, they were making room for them, their air mattresses and stuff like that. And I remember as people started moving things throughout the house that he had touched or whatever, the anxiety that came over me, right, from them moving, it was like moving relics or whatever, like things that he had touched or whatever. And it had literally just been, I'm talking about, it wasn't even 24 hours, right? Like it was up that night. But I remember the anxiety that came over me, and it was because now, instead of me being nitpicky and like being concerned that his shoes were out in the hallway, or that his toothbrush or that his shavings were in the sink, or all the things, his socks everywhere, whatever, like instead of me now being like, oh, I have company coming over, I don't want all this stuff over here, I don't want all this over here, all of a sudden I was like, don't touch it, don't move it. It was like I wanted it right there. I wasn't ready, obviously, to get rid of anything. I wasn't ready for anything to move. And in fact, from that moment on, it literally, I can say distinctively, from that moment on, whatever little OCD that I had left in that area, that department of the house, when it came to that, like, house stuff like that, dissipated. It was gone. It was gone. And I had proof of that. Fast forward many years to when I remarried, and my second husband had grandchildren that would come to the house. They were little, and the little girl who was born while they were living with us and everything, and she was just so cute and adorable. And but as the kids would come over and everything, and my kids are, of course, by this point, they're older. They didn't have like little toys and stuff in the house anymore. But every time his grandkids would come over, they would have like little toys everywhere, and their fingerprints would be everywhere, and little shoes and little socks and stuff. And I can remember being so calm and so like welcoming, happy to have these little feet and little children around and everything, and not caring at all that I had toys everywhere. Because their mom would be like, oh, I gotta pick up these toys, and I used to be like, don't worry about it, sit down, like I don't care about that. And even when they would leave, I just remember being like chuckling to myself when I would see their little handprints on the refrigerator, on little things. I used to think, like to myself, I used to be like, oh, that's so cute, it was like proof that these little people were, moving around my house. Like I had this little proof whenever they would leave, these little handprints. I mean, I eventually would clean everything, right? But I remember, instead of how I used to be when I was little with my own children, when I was younger, where I used to be like, I gotta clean this up, and I used to be OCD, I was now the complete opposite. Did not care. In fact, welcomed it and liked it and thought it was cute. Okay, and so, but I remember that final like shift in that particular thing happening when Travis, that night, when I came home and I realized that once I cleaned his shavings from his face that was in the ring of the sink area that I was always religiously reminding him to please clean, because that used to drive me bananas. And I would tell him, please clean it. I would say it all the time, right? I would nag him about this, whatever, right? But I remember when I finally got to the point, where it was time I was going to clean it. And I remember it being like, once I do this, his shavings, his energy, or the imprints of him being here, that will be gone. It's gone. It's never going to come back. It's never going to come back. Now, some people go through this experience and they're happy about that. Like they're happy that person is no longer coming back, or ever going to come back to revisit them or whatever, because they can't stand that person, right? Depending on who it is. But then when this happens to somebody that you actually loved and that you actually miss and that you actually wanted to see and experience more, it is it's gut-wrenching, right? It's gut-wrenching, it's heart-wrenching, and it puts perspective on what are the real important things in life, right? And I can remember that happening right then. I remember thinking, like, at that point, and I'm talking about, this is like within that week, you know, after he passed, because I was young when this happened, so I knew I probably was going to get married again and everything. But I remember saying to myself, like, if I ever get married again, when I'm with somebody again, I'm never going to nag him about all these little things, because all that energy I spent nagging him when we were newly married and stuff like that, like younger in our marriage, because a lot of that, I mean, eventually you learn to, you know, like, you realize what battles to pick, and you realize a lot of these battles you're just not worth. Okay, but I still had a bit of that in me. I definitely still had some of that in me. I mean, I did try to be nice about it. I definitely, by this point, I was definitely way nicer about it. Like, I was not nasty or mean or anything, but I just remember thinking, like, I would never waste time, energy, words on dumb stuff like nitpicking about pick this up, pick that up, do this, do that, you know, clean your shavings and blah blah. Like, I just remember thinking, like, I'm not gonna do that. And I didn't do that, actually. I didn't do that. But especially when you find somebody who maybe you feel that same type of a deep love and a attachment to, you know, it's like there's a shift, right? So I'm saying that to say, I can remember my life back in many years ago when I was married to my late husband, and the way that I viewed life being one, it was one way, it was like one thing, and it was I viewed it as very straitjackety, you know, very confined, because I can remember feeling like I cared so much about other people's opinions of me, you know, or us, of our family, or of the way we showed up, right? And to some people, I probably looked like I didn't care, because I still felt like the level that I cared was not near as much as some people, because I never was the type to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, even though my last name is Jones. I still had like an image, or I would say a, you know, kind of unrealistic vision of what I thought either life had to look like before I could relax and or whatever, or before I would consider myself okay, or consider or be happy with myself, right? And some of that is just being young and youthful and learning life, right? Now, again, compared to a lot of people I know, it was nowhere near the same, because I was raised to not put value on labels. For example, if you're wearing expensive brands or not. I mean, I remember my mom, my parents very much teaching me that you are not your label. You are not who you are as a person. You're, you know, is not about the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the house you live in, the money in your bank account. It's about who you are to God, and it's your character. And when you are stripped down, and then this is how I was raised, so this is very much taught, but it is still hard to keep a lot of that in balance when you're dealing with people when you're young and in school and everything is about your image, and you want everything to be perfect, your hair, your makeup, your this, that, and the other. So while we didn't have a lot of money anyway to buy a bunch of label clothes or whatever, I wasn't raised like that. So I think to a lot of people, I still didn't come off this way, but there was still a sense of just over concern, right? And all of it, the rest that I didn't quite get rid of after kids and everything, the rest of it went out the door after my late husband passed, because life got very clear to me as far as like what's really important. And I then started to look at life more as like moving moments, okay? Like moving moments or different moments that are moving, because you know life is always moving forward. Every day is a new day, so we are moving forward. If you wake up the next day and you're blessed in that way to wake up the next day, you know, you will have certain experiences, right? And as you're going through that experience, I now view it more as a moment of did I experience that moment full 360, 100%? Like, did I really experience that moment? Did I feel love? Did I give love? And that's how I look at it. Like, did I take the opportunity to love that person, whoever I was with or wherever I was at, or was I present in that moment to experience it and see it now as a whole 100%? Like, from this angle, from that angle, from this angle, from that, and I look at it like, do I have regrets? Okay, like, I started feeling like that even more so, like, basically after my husband passed, but as time kind of went on and I started to really reflect on, my, just that whole journey of grief and all of those things, and as you move past the grief part of it, right, and you start, all of those things, like, that's how I started, and that's kind of how I see life now. Like, it's like, okay, will I regret XYZ as I move on and I look back at this experience? Will I regret this? Or if that person passes, will I regret this? Will I have regrets, right? Because of course, there are things that you're going to regret. There are things that are just regrettable. One of the things that I regret, is just not forcing my late husband to go to the hospital when I thought he should have, but like, for the most part, I didn't have a whole lot of regrets, but some regrets though, and what I have seen in other people, what I've heard and I've seen and heard with my own ears, like I've heard other people express this, just a deep regret that can really eat at a person, especially when somebody that you actually really love on the inside, that you really do love that person. On some level, you love them. Doesn't have to be romantic love, but on some level, you love this person, but you did not express it enough to them while they were here, while they were in front of you, or while they were alive, whatever, right? And that is one of the most deepest, sorrowful regrets that I have seen that eat a person alive. It's when they let their insecurities or their lack or just lack of appreciation, or just busy, whatever it was, stop them from verbally expressing and also emotionally expressing genuine love for that person who may or may not, no longer be with you, or they've moved on into a new relationship, or, they're now living across the world, or whatever the case is, or maybe something regrettable happened and now that person is, locked up or something like that. And you might feel that maybe the way that you raised that person or you affected that person maybe caused them to do whatever, but, and you didn't express enough love when there was love there, right? When there was genuine love. And now you can't express that for whatever reason, like I said, because they could be gone or whatever. That is what I hear the most, regrets. I never hear people say, it's like you very rarely hear people say, I wish I had bought more cars. I wish I had, more money in my bank account, or I wish, maybe to leave to family and friends, but, I wish I had, picked the right shade of lipstick that day, or I wish I had folded all the laundry, or I wish I had cleaned, my closet for the 12th time, or I wish I had, bought this pair of shoes, or I wish I had lived in that mansion instead of this mansion. No. Always, if and when you hear people regret anything, whether they're on their deathbed or not, or whether they're just in general, it's that I wish I had showed more love to my children, or I wish I had showed more love to my parents while they were alive. I wish I had showed more love to my, maybe ex-person, or, your late so-and-so, or or that you did more things. Maybe you had more goals and you didn't get a chance to experience them. I knew somebody who, to his very last day of living, he was an inventor. I mean, he was an inventor in his heart. He was working on his inventions. And I saw him because I remember talking to him. A friend of mine FaceTimed me, and we got to say goodbye to our friend, and well, we knew he didn't have much long, but he couldn't even talk. But I could see and hear everything I needed to hear. I could see in his eyes what he wanted to say. I can remember that. He couldn't talk, but his mind was there. And like just a day or two before, like he was working on his inventions and he was scooting around. I just remember that. And that touched me so deeply, because even to the last day, and I remember seeing him FaceTime me and my second husband. We said goodbye to him, and he had actually went to go visit him. But we let our friend know that we were there, that we were right there with him, and our heart, our love, and everything was present. And he couldn't respond, but in his eyes we could hear what he wanted to say, and we could hear his love for us back. We could see it in his eyes, and for his family, because we were all on FaceTime and everything. But the things that people regret are not the nitpicky little things like, I wish I had paid that bill. Or I wish I was driving this car. It's always around love, showing enough love, being loving towards someone you have genuine love for, and maybe you've just been too scared to express that, or having more experiences, loving experiences, good loving memories, creating good memories with your friends and family, or specific people that you wanted to form stronger bonds with, or just in general using your gifts and ability the right way, or just exploring some of your gifts and ability. Those are the things that people regret the most. They don't ever really regret wearing one brand over another brand, things like that. You don't hear that kind of stuff, right? And so anyway, because of that, because of those experiences that I have had, and that I moved through relatively young in life compared to others, right? It impacted me, and it has impacted even the way that I show up in relationships, to the point that maybe I've been an overgiver the last few times, right? Because of not wanting to have any regrets. On the other hand, because I was careful about making sure that when I end relationships, or whenever I have to end a relationship, no matter what kind of relationship it is, job, friend, family, or romantic, for me, I am careful about making sure that I have zero regrets, like I've done and said and whatever, everything that there is, I am past the point of regret. So believe me, when I get to a point of saying goodbye to somebody, or having to leave or move on from a relationship, and it was by my choice, it was absolutely because I have no regrets. I've made sure that I will not look back on the situation and regret anything about the way that I showed up. Okay? And so I'm not going to say that I've been 100%, like I'm right 100%. It's not about that. It's about what feels right to me, my spirit and my soul, so that I can actually move on in peace, right? And be able to, think about whatever that experience, as I reflect on, certain experiences or certain past things, times in life, moments in life that I've experienced it, I can feel that, and can in my heart feel like, yes, I absorbed everything from that moment in time that I wanted to absorb. Like I was present in that moment, and I showed up the way that I wanted to. And that's a blessing. And that's also a blessing to be able to come to that place, I would say, while I still have a lot of life to live. In some ways it's not a blessing, in the way that, when I think about how I came to this place, like, so, young, was because I moved through some very hard things while I was young, in my 30s, like very, very, very young. And I had to move through some very hard, difficult experiences, you know, several of them. But on the other hand, it has made me, it's like my taste buds are more prominent. It's like, you know, instead of rushing through your meals, you know, like when you're at a restaurant or something, you just, or if you're hungry, you just rush through your meals. You are now like savoring every little thing, like, oh, the salt, oh, the garlic, oh, you know, and you can just really, really like, you know, you enjoy it, right? Because you're able to, you know, you understand that life is full of moments and experiences that you move through, and when the experience is over, and sometimes you have no control over that, and that's okay, that's just a part of life. But you can say you savored every moment of it, that you really enjoyed it, and that you were not worried about dumb, stupid little things like laundry and if your floor is mopped enough. Now, of course, I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, like I'm not a dirty person or anything, you know, like, oh, let's just let your house go get crazy messy. No, you want to actually, you know, I always tell people, and I tell new moms this all the time. I say, there is a difference between nasty and dirty or messy. Messy lived in is okay. In my books, that's A-okay. Especially now, like it's A-okay. I remember even like, I just love having little fingerprints of little babies. Like I like having them on my refrigerator now. I love it because, you know, it's like, it's so cute. Like I just love it. Like, and like, oh, that's proof that they were here. I love it, right? That's not nasty. Now, if their hand was in mud, okay, and stuff like that, then, you know, you're going to have to clean it up, right? Because you can't let the house get nasty, you know? Or if they decided to wipe their butt with their hands, you know how kids do the craziest things, or pick their nose and then decide to give you fingerprints everywhere, of course, again, for germs and things like that, you know, okay? I'm not being ridiculous here, like, seriously, like, okay, there is a difference between dirty and nasty and messy lived in, right? There's the difference, okay? And eventually it all gets cleaned up anyway. But to not miss moments, not miss important, amazing moments, either with your children, with your family, with your friends. They grow up so fast, relationships, things like that. Like, things change very fast sometimes. And, you know, when you look back and you think about how will you remember this? How would this moment be for you? Like, how will you look back at this? Will you have regrets? You know, these are the things that are part of like the salt of life. You know, these are the things that make life worth living. For me, it's very much about expressing love and being open to always express love and receive love in whatever form that it comes. If it comes, you know, in the like if I'm hanging out with the kids that day, my girlfriend's kids are, you know, they're little, but they're young, they're boys, they're very expressive, and they're just open-hearted, loving at this time in their life, and it's just, they say the cutest things, and it's like, I want to always, you know, like be present with them. I love the little things that they say, or the little things that, you know, just how their brain thinks, you know, like, it's so cute. And I can remember, I feel sometimes like, because of being older, it's like, you know, you can be in that moment even more present than I was, even with my own kids, you know. And so yeah, like, that is something that's very interesting. And I also look forward to when I am with somebody else, or, you know, a new friend or a new person, you know, or a new relationship or whatever. Like, for me, I'm looking at that like I'm anxious, not anxious, or I should say I'm welcoming of the new experience of love, or expressions of creating new memories with the person that's in front of me now. You know, like, that this is like a, you know, it's like, you only get these moments. You don't always get these moments back. I had another friend, I knew another friend who had the experience of being married less than 2 months. And she lost her husband. She was younger than me. Now she's remarried, so this has been many years, but she lost her husband here on 285. This is back when I lived in Florida. And I remember back then, I mean, I used to come to Georgia all the time to do different work, different things. And I just remember thinking like 285 was like a death trap. Like, that's just how I always thought about it, because I heard too many bad experiences. Anyway, but this friend of mine, she lost her new husband. They were coming to a family funeral for somebody else, and she ended up losing her husband in an accident. And they did see each other at the accident. They were able to say some things, but by the time they got to the hospital and whatnot, his life was gone, and she was widowed, young, and after only 2 months of being able to create experiences being married to him. And I mean, that hurt me. I wasn't overly close to her, but we're still friends to this day. And she has family here in the state. But it never left my heart of how painful that experience had to be for her, for the family, and just, you know, of how much more I'm sure that she would have wanted to experience in that love, right? But things happen, right? And so, anyway, I say all that to say that, in many ways, the growth and the interpersonal growth that I've been able to experience through these different things, you know, I am thankful for. I'm very thankful for. And to be able to still be open-hearted and, you know, being able to express love and give love even to this day, you know, like, it is a gift. And yeah. Anyway, that's it for now. Bye.